The British-Australian singer and actress, Olivia Newton-John, led a very successful Hollywood career that for the most part was unimpeded by dramas and scandals. However, in 2005, her on and off again boyfriend Patrick McDermott vanished without a trace while at sea. Years later, many reports came forward about his possible whereabouts, alluding to theories that he had changed his name and lived off-grid in Mexico. English-born singer and actress Olivia Newton-John became an international sensation during a career that spanned more than 5 decades. She tied the knot twice and had a number of long-term relationships, but her personal life was far more private and less scandalous than many of her counterparts. One of Olivia's longest love affairs was with a handsome Korean-born photographer and cameraman named Patrick McDermott. The couple dated for nearly a decade, but by the summer of 2005, it appeared as though they'd finally split up for good. But what might have been just another Hollywood breakup took an unforeseen turn when Patrick vanished into thin air during an overnight fishing trip in Southern California. As the youngest of 3 children, Olivia was born in Cambridge, England, on September 26, 1948, to an English father and a German mother whose family had emigrated to the United Kingdom in 1933. Her father was an MI5 officer for much of her childhood, but he moved the family to Australia in 1954 after accepting headmaster and professor of German positions with Ormond College at the University of Melbourne. Olivia made friends and settled into her new environment quickly, and at the age of 14, she and 3 female classmates formed a band called Soul 4, which frequently performed at her brother-in-law's coffee shop. Though she originally planned on going to veterinary school, she realized early on that she didn't have an aptitude for science, and that performing was more to her liking. Her first acting role came in 1964, when she played Lady Mary Lazenby in a high school production of The Admirable Crichton. The following year, she and Ian Turpie co-starred in the 1965 Australian musical film Funny Things Happen Down Under. She and Ian became a hot item, and later that year she won a talent contest on the television program Sing Sing Sing, hosted by Johnny O'Keefe. But though her prize was a trip to England, she delayed departing for more than a year because she was worried about missing Ian. Her mother eventually persuaded her to go, and shortly after arriving in the UK, she formed the Pat and Olivia duet with Pat Carroll. The pair enjoyed success on the European nightclub circuit, but when Pat's visa expired, she stayed behind to pursue a solo career. After a number of moderately successful singing and acting gigs, she released her first solo album, If Not For You, in 1971. In the UK, the album was called Olivia Newton-John, and the title track that had been written by Bob Dylan became her first international hit. In 1972, her second album, Olivia, was released in the UK, but not in the United States, where she wasn't as well known. However, that changed with the release of Let Me Be There in 1973. The album's title track reached the American pop and country charts and earned Olivia a Grammy and an Academy of Country Music Award. Her next single, I Honestly Love You, became her first pop #1 and earned her 2 more Grammys in 1974. That year, she also beat out more established American performers like Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton for the Country Music Association's coveted Female Vocalist of the Year award. This marked the first time that the award had gone to a British singer, but the decision wasn't popular with many country music purists. Nonetheless, Olivia's multifaceted career continued to soar when she played Sandy in the film adaptation of Grease alongside John Travolta in 1978. Then in 1981, she released Physical, her most successful studio album ever. Physical went double platinum and helped to shake the wholesome good girl image she'd worked so hard to maintain early in her career. In 1984, Olivia married actor and dancer Matt Lattanzi, who she met years earlier while filming Xanadu. The couple had a daughter in 1986 and continued pursuing their personal careers, but in 1992, Olivia was diagnosed with breast cancer. The same week, her father passed away. She eventually went into remission and became a staunch advocate for breast cancer research and other important health issues. But by then, her marriage was on the rocks, largely because she and Matt Lattanzi had differing views on spirituality and had drifted apart over the years. They ultimately divorced but remained close friends. And in 1996, Olivia began dating Korean-American cameraman and lighting technician Patrick McDermott. Olivia and Patrick had an on and off again relationship for 9 years. The attractive couple seemed genuinely happy when they were together, and there were never any scandals, dramas, or cringeworthy public spectacles like there were with other high-profile couples. On the other hand, Patrick apparently disliked the Hollywood crowd's phoniness and superficiality, and though he always smiled during photo ops, he particularly hated the red carpet events that he regularly attended with his famous and beautiful girlfriend. In hindsight, some friends and acquaintances claim that he may have felt like a perpetual outsider, trapped in a world of glamorous A-listers who were far wealthier and more successful than he was. Olivia and Patrick decided to call it quits in the summer of 2005. Olivia was on a promotional tour in Australia in mid-June when Patrick signed up for an overnight fishing trip that was scheduled to depart from San Pedro, California on the 30th. Patrick was an avid angler who regularly went on overnight fishing excursions, but on that occasion, he didn't know any of the other 22 passengers on board the 85-foot fishing boat, Freedom. The Freedom typically fishes off Catalina, San Clemente, Santa Barbara, and San Nicolas Islands, but occasionally runs out to the Tanner and Cortez Banks, approximately 100 miles southwest of San Pedro, where tuna and other big sport fish are running. The June 30th outing departed from San Pedro on schedule, but it's not clear which direction the boat headed and how far offshore it went. However, one Freedom passenger named Tony Mayo said he bumped into Patrick about 3 hours into the trip, but that he never saw him again after that. The trip was mostly uneventful, but Patrick was nowhere to be found when the Freedom returned to port the following day. The crew eventually discovered his keys, wallet, and passport on the boat, and his car was found in the parking lot at the San Pedro Marina. But surprisingly, nobody reported that a passenger had gone missing, and alarm bells weren't sounded until July the 6th, when Patrick failed to turn up at a family event. And even then, his family didn't notify police until 5 days later. Neither police or Coast Guard turned up any evidence of any accident, foul play, suicide, or staged disappearance. But an investigation into standard operating procedure on the Freedom discovered that the crew rarely counted passengers before, during, or after overnight fishing trips. With such lax practices, it's easy to see how someone could slip on and off the boat or fall overboard without being noticed. With no evidence to the contrary, both investigations concluded that Patrick McDermott fell overboard and drowned. At the time he went missing, Patrick McDermott was a physically fit 47-year-old with no known health conditions. If he'd fallen off the Freedom, he probably would have screamed and made a commotion that would have been heard by at least one passenger or crew member. However, nobody reported anything out of the ordinary. Another interesting angle is why anyone would take a passport on a fishing trip that departed from and arrived back at the same port in the same country. It had also been theorized that Patrick staged the incident and faked his own death to start a new life by getting out from under a load of debt he racked up in recent years. According to various sources, he filed for bankruptcy in 2000 after amassing more than $30,000 in debt and approximately $8,000 in unpaid child support that was owed to his former wife, Yvette Nipar, for their son. But for a well-paid Hollywood cameraman and photographer with steady work and tons of industry experience, $38,000 just doesn't seem like an unpayable debt. A number of additional theories have arisen that may shed light on how things played out on the night of June the 30th, 2005. First, Patrick may have intentionally slipped off the boat and into the water in the middle of the night when no one else was around. If so, he could have swam to a boat waiting nearby to pick him up. Then again, he may have hidden himself in a dark corner of the Freedom he discovered on a previous trip and snuck off unseen after the boat had returned to port. Another possibility is that he only got on the boat long enough to plant his wallet, keys, and passport, but that he slipped back off unnoticed before it departed from San Pedro. We may never know what happened, but the story made international headlines after being featured on the well-known American television programs America's Most Wanted and Dateline NBC. During its 2009 investigation, Dateline hired a private investigator, Philip Klein, to get at the bottom of the matter once and for all. Klein and his team of investigators believed Patrick was still alive, and they created the website findpatrickmcdermott.com to prove it. Once the site was up and running, they logged the IP address and physical location of each visitor. What they found was a disproportionately high level of traffic coming from various locations up and down Mexico's west coast. The investigators concluded that Patrick was probably alive and well and living on a boat, but that he didn't stay in any one place for too long. Another big revelation came shortly thereafter, when Klein disclosed that McDermott had left Olivia a poignant and nostalgic note and a bouquet of roses shortly before disappearing. The note admitted that they'd had their fair share of problems, but went on to say that Patrick always loved Olivia and always would. One interpretation is that Patrick wrote the goodbye letter to his longtime sweetheart because he knew he'd never see her again. It's not clear what his motivation was, but in the following years, a number of investigators claimed to have found and actually spoken with Patrick. Most said he was living a private and relatively comfortable life and just wanted to be left alone. Few of the claims were ever backed up by actual evidence. But later, Philip Klein revealed that he received a fax from a town near Acapulco that was purportedly sent by a representative of Patrick McDermott. Klein was originally suspicious of the fax's authenticity, but after speaking with the man on the phone, he decided that he was credible. Klein vowed to follow the lead as far as he could. However, he urged everyone to be patient because at that time, Mexico was in a state of chaos, and he feared for his own safety and the safety of his associates. He said he'd make another statement through Dateline NBC if an agreement could be reached with Patrick. He also thanked Interpol and the citizens and governments of a number of countries for their assistance during his investigation. But there's no proof they provided any help whatsoever, and he may have made the statement to lend an air of legitimacy to his claims. Later, Klein said he travelled to a town near Puerto Vallarta and found Patrick living under the alias Pat Kim. But despite numerous promises, he repeatedly failed to provide any proof that Patrick was alive and well and living south of the border. Meanwhile, additional tips and sightings poured in from Mexico, Central America, and South America. Then in 2016, another private investigator said he'd finally located Patrick working on a wealthy family's private yacht in Mexico. That same year, Australian magazine Woman's Day claimed the investigators found Patrick living with a new girlfriend near Sayulita, Mexico. In 2017, New Idea published photographs of a couple purported to be Patrick and his girlfriend somewhere in Mexico. But a week later, a Canadian couple revealed that they were actually the ones in the photo. In the end, none of the claims were ever substantiated, and neither Olivia or Patrick's ex-wife Yvette Nipar think he's alive. In fact, Yvette thinks that Philip Klein is a habitual liar and a con man who latched onto the family tragedy for personal gain and to promote a book he wrote about McDermott's disappearance titled Lost at Sea. She's also convinced that Klein's antics had given her son Chance false hope and prevented him from getting any closure and moving on with his life. As proof, she points to the fact that Klein repeatedly waffled his way out of providing proof to back up his assertions. She even asked Amazon's CEO Jeff Bezos to block the publication of Klein's book. Unfortunately, her pleas fell on deaf ears, and the book was published in 2012. Olivia eventually put the disappearance behind her, but she admitted that it was never far from her mind and that she always assumed Patrick was dead. Interestingly, she became close friends with his ex-wife, Yvette Nipar, during the media frenzy that followed the incident. Then in 2008, Olivia married an entrepreneur and natural health advocate named John Easterling, who she met years earlier while vacationing in Peru. Olivia and John continued to pursue their personal careers throughout the marriage, and in 2022, Olivia received one of the greatest civilian honours in all of Great Britain by being made a dame. As the female equivalent of a knight, it's an honour that can only be bestowed by the Queen. Sadly, that same year, she also died from cancer, which she had been battling for some 30-odd years, on August the 8th, 2022.
Thanks for watching. If you would like one of your comments to show up right here on the screen, then start a comment with Shadow Shoutout. And if you like this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to see more content like this. And hit that notifications bell to keep up to date with the latest videos. And together, we can explore the strange, the terrifying, the unknown, the shadow matter.